A party in Miami. Music, laughter, the glow of celebration filling the room. And then, silence. Not the uncomfortable kind. The kind that falls over a crowd when something real happens. When a moment cuts through the noise and reminds everyone in the room that they are witnessing something they will never forget. Lars Nootbaar, one of the most emotionally expressive players in professional baseball, was standing in that room when Shohei Ohtani said something to him. Something quiet. Something unscripted. Something that nobody expected to come from a man famous for his silence. And Nootbaar, the outfielder who had pepper-grinded his way into the hearts of an entire nation, who had played with fire and passion through every inch of the WBC, began to cry. The American media, watching from the outside, scrambled to understand what had just happened. What could Shohei Ohtani possibly say to reduce a grown professional athlete to tears at a celebration party? The answer, when it finally surfaced, didn't just explain a moment between two teammates. It revealed the Ohtani that the world rarely gets to see, the one that exists not in box scores or highlight reels, but in the quiet, private spaces between the games. When the WBC reunion gathering in Miami was first announced, most of the baseball world treated it as a footnote. A pleasant social event. Former teammates sharing drinks and old stories, the kind of gathering that happens after every major tournament and fades from memory within a week. Nobody anticipated it would produce one of the most talked about moments in recent baseball history. The event brought together members of the 2023 WBC Japan squad, the team that had stormed through the tournament with a combination of elite talent and extraordinary cohesion, defeating the United States in the final in a game that the entire baseball world had stopped to watch. At the center of that championship run, as always, was Shohei Ohtani. But also at the center, perhaps unexpectedly, was Lars Nootbaar. Nootbaar had been a revelation at the WBC. As the first player of Japanese heritage from an American MLB roster to suit up for Samurai Japan, he carried a weight of symbolism that would have buckled most players. Instead, he thrived. His pepper grinder celebration became a cultural phenomenon. His energy in the outfield was electric. And his emotional bond with the Japanese players and the Japanese public turned out to be something far deeper than anyone had predicted before the tournament began. So when these two men, Ohtani and Nootbaar, found themselves in the same room again in Miami, there was already history between them. Shared sweat. Shared pressure. Shared glory. What nobody knew was that Ohtani had been carrying something he needed to say. To understand the weight of what happened in Miami, you have to first understand something about Shohei Ohtani that the casual fan rarely sees. Ohtani does not speak carelessly. This is not simply a language barrier. This is not shyness in the conventional sense. People who have spent time with him, teammates, coaches, journalists who have earned rare moments of genuine access, consistently describe the same quality. When Ohtani says something, he means it completely. He does not fill silence with noise. He does not offer compliments the way politicians offer handshakes, warm and weightless. When he speaks about another person, it comes from somewhere real. Darvish touched on this during his reflections on the WBC. He noted that Ohtani interacted with younger players not through grand speeches or motivational performances, but through small, specific, personal gestures. A word here. A joke there. A moment of eye contact that communicated more than a paragraph could. Former Nippon Ham Fighters teammates have said similar things. That Ohtani in a locker room is not the loudest voice. He is the most present. There is a difference, and it matters. So when word spread that something Ohtani said at the Miami gathering had moved Nootbaar to tears, the people who knew Ohtani best were not entirely surprised. They were surprised by the public nature of it. But not by the depth. Whatever Ohtani said, they knew it was true. And they knew he had been thinking it for a long time. To fully feel the weight of this moment, you need to understand what Lars Nootbaar actually went through at the WBC. On paper, his participation looked like a wonderful story. A player with Japanese heritage finally getting to represent the country of his mother. A chance to connect with a culture that had always been part of his identity but never fully his arena. The reality was considerably more complicated. Nootbaar arrived at the Japan camp as an outsider in almost every measurable sense. His Japanese was limited. His relationships with the players were new. And despite the warm reception from the public, he carried the quiet pressure of knowing that some observers were watching him, but what the cameras didn't always capture was the emotional labor of that journey. Nootbaar later spoke in interviews about how deeply he had wanted to belong, not just as a performer, but as a genuine member of the team. How much it had mattered to him that the Japanese players accepted him not as a novelty, but as a brother. His pepper grinder celebration, which became famous worldwide, was not calculated. It was release. Pure, unfiltered relief and joy from a player who had fought every day of that tournament to prove he deserved to be there. And now, in Miami, Otani was about to tell him something about all of that. The details of exactly what Otani said have traveled through the baseball world in fragments, the way important private moments always do, pieces shared, carefully, by people who were there. What is understood is this: Otani spoke to Nootbaar directly, personally, and specifically. He did not offer a general compliment about his performance. He did not say something vague about being a good player or a valuable teammate. He told Nootbaar what he had meant to the team. Not to the tournament. Not to the scoreboard. To the team, to the human group of men who had traveled together, eaten together, prepared together, and ultimately won together. Otani, according to those familiar with the exchange, told Nootbaar that his presence had changed something in the atmosphere of the squad. That the energy he brought, the unashamed, full-bodied passion of a player who held nothing back, had given the Japanese players something. In a culture where stoicism is often valued, where composure under pressure is celebrated as the highest form of strength, Nootbaar had been something different. He had been free. And Otani told him, quietly and clearly, that this freedom had been a gift. That was when Nootbaar's eyes filled. The footage and the accounts that filtered out from Miami landed in American sports media like a small earthquake. The reaction was immediate and revealing. Commentators who had spent years analyzing Otani through the lens of statistics and performance suddenly found themselves trying to process a moment that had nothing to do with either. Sports journalists who had built entire frameworks around Otani as a phenomenon, a spectacle, a once-in-a-generation athletic event, were confronted with the simpler and somehow more startling reality. He's just a person. An extraordinarily aware, emotionally intelligent, quietly powerful person, but a person. Several American outlets framed their coverage around surprise. The headline angle was almost universally some version of, "We didn't know he had this in him." And that framing, while understandable, also revealed something about the gap between Otani's public image in America and who he actually is. In Japan, this version of Otani is less surprising. The players who came up with him, the coaches who watched him develop, the teammates who shared a cafeteria with him during the WBC, they have always known that behind the historic numbers is a person of unusual depth. Someone who pays attention. Someone who remembers. Someone who, when the moment is right, says exactly what needs to be said. The Miami moment didn't reveal a new. He spoke about what the WBC experience had meant to him in terms that went far beyond baseball. About how representing Japan had connected him to a part of his identity he had always felt but never fully inhabited. About how the relationships formed in that tournament, the bond with Munetaka Murakami, the camaraderie with the pitching staff, the daily experience of being inside a culture that was and wasn't his own, had changed something in him permanently. And he spoke about Otani with the particular care of someone choosing words for something important. He said that Otani had made him feel seen. Not as a player. As a person. As someone whose specific journey, with all its complexity and emotional weight, had been noticed and valued by the best player on the team. When someone like that tells you that you mattered, Nootbaar said, pausing in a way that suggested he was still processing it, it's not like a compliment. It's more than that. It stays with you. For those who follow Ohtani closely, this language will sound familiar. It is almost exactly how Darvish described his own experience of Ohtani, not the player, but the person. The consistent theme in every account from those who have spent real time with him is not what he does on the field. It is how he makes the people around him feel genuinely important. There is a larger story living inside the Ohtani Nootbaar moment in Miami. It is the story of what the WBC actually accomplished, beneath the championship trophy and the television ratings and the viral celebrations. Something between cultures that share a love of baseball but experience it through entirely different emotional vocabularies. Something between a man who has become the defining symbol of Japanese excellence on the world stage and a man who spent his whole career existing between two identities, never fully certain which world fully claimed him. Ohtani, standing in a party in Miami, looked at Lars Nootbaar and said, "You belong. You always belonged. What you brought was irreplaceable." And in doing so, he did something that no contract, no trophy, no record-breaking season can manufacture. He reminded everyone watching, everyone who heard the story, everyone who felt the ripple of it move through the baseball world, that the deepest victories in this sport have nothing to do with runs or outs. They have to do with people choosing to see each other clearly. And saying so out loud. The highlight reels from the 2023 WBC will show you Ohtani striking out Mike Trout on a sweeper in the final at-bat of the championship game. They will show you Nootbaar's pepper grinder celebration, arms spinning, face open with uncontained joy. They will show you a team lifting a trophy, a country erupting, a sport remembering why it exists. But somewhere in a room in Miami, long after the cameras had moved on, the truest moment of that entire WBC story quietly happened. A man told another man that he had mattered. And the world, once it found out, was moved all over again.